Hey everybody, this is your week 2 overview, and in this overview I wanted to touch on some of what you're going to be doing, looking over this week, give you some things to think about, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about your research project this semester. So let's go ahead and jump on in. Alright, let's bring this up. This week we are in Module 2 and we're talking about gender roles. This is what it looks like on my side. Your side will look a little bit different. Let's see what that looks like. Under Contents, Module 2, this is what yours will look like. Alright, so essentially what we're going to be talking about are media narratives, media construction of gender narratives. Male, female, LGBTQ, beyond the specifics of any one gender or several genders, what I really want you to think about is actually how these narratives are constructed, and then start thinking about for yourself what these narratives might be. So literally, there are decades and decades worth of scholarly articles that discuss and debate what narratives exist concerning societal and acceptable and hegemonic masculinity and femininity and transsexuality and homosexuality in a variety of different ways. So beyond that, and I have given you, a taste of this, what I want you to do is I want you, instead of trying to really look at these individual, I want you to consider this concept as a whole. What does the media do to try and create and reinforce ideas of gender? That's what I want you to think about. Now, as you go through, I've given you some things to think about already. Day 5, which should be Monday, you're going to be looking at femininity. I've given you things like a historical overview I've typed up. A really interesting segment from an academic film called Killing Us Softly that looks at advertising. And then some other articles discussing femininity in a variety of ways. So this should give you a taste of essentially how femininity has been treated or is treated in the media. So that gives you a primer before we get into day 6 that looks at masculinity. So one of the things that I don't want you to forget about or to gloss over is that if we're in a world in which femininity is defined and is established, even if you consider this to be a white patriarchal society, if femininity is defined in a certain way, then masculinity inevitably has to be defined in a way as well, even if it is hegemonically defined, which will be discussed in this section. There's a video, again, that you can watch, a discussion of hegemonic masculinity, and again, these are invisible codes of masculinity that exists within society. They give power, but they also create very strong limitations. So I want you to consider that. Where is the power imbued, and where are the limitations set? And how do these compare and contrast to the things that you considered about femininity? Think about that. Then we go on to alternate lifestyles on day 7. We start talking about LGBT, LGBTQ, representation, some alternate forms of gender like polygamy, as well as things like erotic gaze. And that's Gaze. Gaze is a theoretical framework that if you're interested in going into any form of academic endeavor looking into sexuality, it's something that you would probably need to familiarize yourself with quite a bit. The idea of gaze is that, and how to kind of put this simply, is essentially that there is a societal standard of looking at certain people, certain groups. So, for example, if we're saying that say women are constantly subjected to, and this is a big one, male gaze, Gaze, what that means is that women in society are constantly seen and viewed through the filter of male expectations, and from that perspective, males are the dominant and powerful entities in society, and women are essentially subject to their expectations and their desires. Female gaze is something that has come in a little bit later on, and this is maybe looking at certain or males in that same sort of light, that they are in perhaps a sexual role. There's some perspectives that look at things like male bonding rituals, sporting events, like, for example, NFL football, from an erotic perspective, that says that there are some aspects that are pseudo homoerotic about NFL football in general. Again, it's for you to determine where you agree and disagree, but this is where some scholarship looks, or some scholarship goes within this realm of mediated sexuality. So it's something that you may take a look at. And then at the end, we talk about, on day 5, this is Thursday, you have a summary, you have a short video that I'd like you to record and post concerning what is difference. I want you to discuss with me. I want you to discuss with me how the media creates separation between groups of people. So based on race, based on gender, how do they say these are one group versus another, the in group versus the out group, the powerful versus the disenfranchised? How does the media play a role in creating those differences? Pick an artifact and give me some perspective on this. Turn it over and use some of the theoretical framework that we've discussed so far. Cultivation, framing, meaning making. These are all things that you can talk about, as well as male gaze, female gaze, homoerotic gaze. These are just some things that we can talk about. A quick Google search will give you some definitions and further explanations of any of these theoretical framework. Okay, let me go back and then move on before I get any further than I have to. The final thing that you'll be needing to turn in this week is your proposal for your analysis paper. So it's something I want you to think about as you work this week. So this will be busy, but these shouldn't take you a tremendous amount of time. Your final proposal, you can see the outline in your syllabus, which is right here. In your syllabus, you will write a 250 to 500 word abstract, identify a topic dealing with race, gender, or class representation in the media. Okay? Now this is important. Race, gender, or class representation in the media. How the media represents race, gender, or class. Now, a particular race, a particular gender, a particular class, again, in the media, the broadcast media. That's what we're talking about. Or, sorry, not broadcast, but in the media. So it can be broadcast, it can be internet, it can be video games, it can be music, it can be advertising, it can be any of these things. But again, I want you to understand we are talking about mass communication, and we are talking about the media. All right. So when I say music, I'm not talking about something like, say, classical. Classical composers from the 1500s or something like that. We're talking about the contemporary modern media. And then I would ask you to write up just a very short idea of what you want to look into and what you want to explore. with at least 2 to 5 scholarly sources. And this is peer-reviewed journal articles. These could be research-oriented books or academically oriented books. These are not blogs, websites. These are not newspaper or magazine articles. This is academic research, okay? So that is what you have due today. This week. And then you'll submit it in the Dropbox in either a doc, docx, or PDF, and any of those is fine. And I'll get back to you, give you some feedback, and let you know what's going on. Final thing I wanted to touch on today, and I know I'm getting a little bit long here, so I will try and hit this as quickly as I can, is just a little bit about how I would suggest you go about working on this project. Now, essentially, you're looking at about 6 to 8 pages, double space, Times New Roman. That's about what you're looking at. You got about a page for an introduction, about a page for a conclusion at the end, which leaves you with about, 4 to 6 pages of, for all intents and purposes, an expanded literature review. That is what you're doing for this paper in this class. It should not be terribly difficult to put together. But what I'd want to make clear is that I'm not looking for you to give me a synopsis of a bunch of different papers. That's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for you to give me is an analysis of the subject. I want you to think about the subject. I want you to discuss it with me, and then cite things that are going on within that field. With that in mind, I wanted to show you a little bit of my own research and show you how this works. The name of the game is called synthesizing, or is synthesizing information. Synthesizing information is, in short, is this: taking lots of information, tying it together, and then coming up with some sort of conclusion that takes advantage of numerous pieces of information. Now, again, what I do not want you to do is give me one article citation and then go through and give me a summary of what that article was all about. That is not what we're looking for here. Let's take a look at this paper that I've got out for review with an international journal right now. I won't give you too much since it is still being reviewed at the time of this recording, so I'll just give you some of the highlights. This is my reference page. There's about 50, I think there's 46 references that I've used in about a 14-page paper, something like that. So 46 references in a 14-page paper. This is a section that I've prepared and taken a look at. So if you'll take a look at what I've got here, it says the subject of sexual content in popular music has been studied a great deal over the years. Okay, I've made a claim. It's been studied a great deal over the years. Consumption or exposure of music rife with sexual content in messages has been shown to have profound effects on attitudes toward any number of sex-related topics. Okay, I've just made another more specific claim. Where can I get support for the idea that sexual content and messages has been shown where to have profound effect on attitudes toward any number of sex-related topics? Well, I can't just cite one place. I can't just cite, or I can't just leave that without citations. I've made a claim, so I need to support that. Where do I support it? Bleakley, Fison and Jordan, Kistler and Lee, Turchin and Garsk, 2008. So these are 3 different sources that have had something to do and found some sort of research that has shown, or they have generated some research that have shown that sexual content and messages have effects on attitudes toward sex-related topics. Now, I go on to say specifically there are links between consumption of sexuality or sexually explicit material and risky sexual behavior, such as minors engaging in sexual activity. So that is a very specific area of effect. And then I cite the different articles that have found some sort of link between For example, minors engaging in sexual activity. So, consumption of sexually explicit material and minors engaging in sexual activity. So, in this case, Bleakley et al., Brown, Wright, Zhang, they've all done research, which I have cited over here as I was reading. I just basically cited an article and then I pulled sections out that I found was interesting. So I'll talk about that in a second. So as I was reading Chandler, I cited Chandler, and then I found on page 565, exposure to sexual content in songs and imagery, sexual imagery in music video continues to participate permissive sexual attitudes and behaviors, particularly among adolescents and young adults. It's in this article, but they also cite these two. So I have 3 references there. I have the article, the main article, plus the 2 additional citations that they have. Now I can go and find these articles, which I did. I found this one, and I just dropped those underneath the piece of the original article that I pulled out. This is how you actually take one article and start expanding your research and expanding this sort of investigation and finding more and more content that can help you make arguments concerning different topics. So in this case, sexually explicit material and minors engaging in sexual activity. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4 different people that have done research in this area, 4 different articles. Sexual activity under the influence of alcohol and other controlled substances. And then I've got 1 and 2 different articles about that. And even violent activity as part of sexual experience. And then I've got 1, 2, 3 different articles in that. So in this one little section, I've cited 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different articles. I've cited 11 different articles in a matter of 4 sentences in this one paragraph. Now, I definitely go back and I use these articles again as I expand in certain areas. So if I am talking specifically about consumption of media and how minors react to it, then I go back and I expand in those areas of like Bleakley, Hennessy, and Jordan, or Brown, or Wright and Rubin, and so forth and so on. But you can see how very quickly you can start building a bigger and bigger and bigger database of research. Now, as I said, what I've done over here, and this is where I actually start, is build essentially an annotated bibliography. What I'll do is I'll go through and I will search using the methods that I showed you in the video in your news feed about using the Steen library system. I will search through the library for articles that seem to indicate or seem to be of the topic that I'm looking for. And then as I read, I'll pull out sections. In this case, I will copy and paste or highlight and pull out sections that seem interesting. These are direct quotes, direct sections from the paper. So let's see if I can find something that was of particular interest. Okay, so here's one that I pulled out for Brown 2006. Brown et al. Reports that adolescents aged 12 to 14 who preferred heavier sexual diet, defined by source of blah, 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 more frequently and media selection that contained more sexual content were more likely than those with lighter SEM. And this tells me what page it was on, so I can always go back and actually read more about this. It was a really long quote, so I only pulled out a section of it. A little bit later on, I pulled out a more specific section from page 566 that said this study concluded that among black adolescents, perceptions of more permissive peer sexual behavior increased the risk of sexual intercourse. This was from Brown et al. 2006. And from the overall article, Chandler, so forth and so on, 2015. So, as much as possible, I want to go back to the original article. In this case, I want to go back to Brown and find that, which I did. Brown right here. But I always can use the article that I found as well. So I'm going to stop right there. If you have any questions, I hope this has helped clarify. But in this project, you need at least 10 academic sources. It should not be a hard thing to put together 10 sources for a project like this. It should be just a matter of trying to read the content and decide what angle you want to take. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, if there's something that I can help you with, please let me know ASAP. You have my cell phone number. Just text me, and I'll try and answer any questions you have by text, or if you'd like to talk, just let me know that, and I will try and make time to call you or FaceTime or however you'd like to chat if I can. All right. Good luck. I hope this has helped, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.